Welcome, everyone. My name is Rick Bontkowski, and this is the AMP'D UP211 Podcast. We've got Scotti Trinler here today. I'm very stoked about this particular appearance. I'm so happy he was able to take some time out of his busy schedule to be here. You know, I was first sort of brought to knowing Scotti through his endeavors with Costa Canyoning and also his video blog, which is called Stump Life Adventures. Fantastic group of videos online that you can check out. Without further ado, Scotti, how are you, sir? Good to see you.
I'm doing great, my man. How you doing?
I am doing excellent. Where in the world are you right now?
I'm in a small little town in north central Florida called Inverness.
Oh, really? Inverness. Now, where is that in relation to the Gulf?
We're about 30 minutes from the Gulf and about an hour east or an hour west of Orlando.
Okay. Yeah, I actually grew up vacationing in South Seas Plantation, and then spent a lot of time in like Captiva and Fort Myers areas, and then eventually did a lot of travel to Sanibel and places like that. Want to go back more, but we're go ahead.
I went to elementary school in Sanibel Island, and my wife and I got married at Blind Pass right there between Sanibel and Captiva. I know
Oh
what
my
you're talking
gosh.
about very well.
Wow, that's incredible. Man, that's such a strange coincidence, don't you think?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, I think what I want to talk about with you initially is I know you are a patient care manager with OPC. Can you explain to me the mission statement of OPC? Like, what is that company about? And then, if you don't mind us transitioning into exactly what role you play in that organization.
So OPC Orthotics Prosthetic Centers, it's primarily a prosthetic company now, and it's been around for about 30 years. It's still a family-owned business. The same guy that started it, Paul Wiat, who started making braces out of a garage, is still the same owner right now, and he's actually transitioning both of his sons into bigger roles within the company. That being said, we've got about 22 locations in Florida, and basically his mission statement to me is like, just do the right thing. It's kind of cool being as big as we are, but yet still family owned. We're really able to help out a lot of amputees in a lot of different ways that other companies, unfortunately, are not able to. A perfect example, Medicare, the majority of our patients are on Medicare, and that's an 80-20 split. And just for simple numbers, of low knee amputee, it's $10,000. Medicare is only paying $8,000 of that.
Right.
So there's what amputee sitting around with an extra $2,000 around.
Right.
So we have the capability to help these patients if they are in financial need, that we can do with like a hardship waiver form for them, and sure enough, we're able to waiver off that extra 20%. And then we actually get patients that don't have any insurance, and it's not that we don't stop seeing them. It's just we get a lot of donations from other amputees that maybe have passed away or so, and we do the best we can to help them get something. So
I think that's a really important point. Just to stop and talk about that, because bridging those gaps between the reality of a good fitting prosthesis and the financial piece, sometimes that valley is much bigger than people realize. Because when I talk to someone who knows nothing about the life of an amputee or what that journey is like, they tend to make these assumptions that, well, that's an easy fix. I mean, you have insurance and you just get the stuff you need, right? And so often becoming an amputee can be born from different types of tragedies, different types of hardships, and people just don't have those resources. So understanding that you create sort of a bridge in some situations for patients, I would think is really valuable and would set you apart, correct?
It does, in a big way, and like I said, due to the size we are and being a family business, that we're able to do that. Like a lot of friends look at me because you see the commercials, you see all the stuff, you see the running blades. Like, oh man, I saw this amazing knee. It's waterproof. You can do all this stuff with it. You should get one of those. I
Yeah,
was like, oh man, I saw this awesome Ferrari. Like it goes really fast. You should get one of those.
exactly. They're just handing them out.
Yeah,
It's
unfortunately,
not a
man,
problem.
the technology is there and it's constantly improving. I tell all the amputees I meet, today's the best day to be an amputee. Tomorrow's even better because the technology is always improving. But
Right.
unfortunately, it looks as though that the insurance companies are fighting harder and harder, more than they ever have, to deny people like the proper, prosthetic technology that they deserve.
Yeah, because medical necessity has become, you know, something that we have to demystify. And I would imagine, as someone who's in the business, because let's face it, first of all, you're an amputee. So you know what that journey feels like. You know what those needs are, that set of needs. You're not someone who's, able bodied, walking around with two legs and saying, do I really need this? Do you really need that stuff? Do you need the best? Do you need the most high functioning? Well, yeah, there are amputees that can reach certain places in their life simply because they have the equipment to do so. And understanding that from your perspective, through your lens, I would think is critical comparative to, let's say, someone that works in that business that isn't an amputee. And not to say that they're any less sensitive to it, but you know it because you wake up every single day with it.
Yeah, and it's the type of thing, so that you, because of the K levels, how it all works out. K1 sit to stand, a little tiny bit of ambulatory, all the way to K4, which is like the running blades and what you
Yep.
see in the Paralympics. Well, any of those K4 componentry, like none of the insurance companies pay for that at all. So that's all stuff that fundraisers coming out of your own pocket. Like, I go snowboarding and I have a special type of knee, and the insurance companies do not pay for that one bit. So there's a lot of great, programs out there. CAF, the Challenge Athletes Foundation. When I first came back to Florida as a new amputee, they were super supportive, and they give out grants every single year. You just got to fill out a lot of paperwork, and
Hmm.
yeah, they helped me get the equipment that I needed to stay as active as I wanted to be.
Sure, sure, no doubt. And you being part of this organization, when did that start officially? And what is a day in the life for you within the confines of that organization, within that space? What does your day feel like?
So I lost my leg in a motorcycle accident in Costa Rica almost 9 years ago, and I owned my own adventure business, repelling people and taking people down waterfalls. So once I lost my leg in a motorcycle accident, I knew I had to go onto a different road, a different path, as you will. And I once I was there, I didn't have any insurance, and I kind of, most of my savings went up with everything I had to do, from the hospital bills to the prosthetics. And once I started seeing how expensive the prosthetics were and how much was involved in it, I was in the situation where I don't really want to be dependent on somebody else for my mobility the rest of my life.
Sure.
So I started looking into colleges to become a prosthetist. And dude, it blew my mind at the time. There was only like 10 in America and only one in Florida. And the one in Florida was in St. Petersburg. My folks at the time still lived in Fort Myers.
Hmm.
So yeah, we made the move, and I started going to school to become a prosthetist.
And feeling that calling, and when you were going through your educational piece, how many other people were in a similar situation? And what I mean by that is how many other amputees were in that pursuit?
When I first started going to there, because I already had a bachelor's degree in international relations, so it looked like it was going to be a 2-year program. Well, they changed it from a bachelor's into a master's. And the
Mm,
school that was giving it was St. Pete College, and it wasn't a university, so they weren't able to give a master's. So they were in a transition period, trying to work with the Florida State University and getting a civil engineering degree with a emphasis in prosthetics. So I ended up actually going into the technician program, where I'm actually working as a tech and making the sockets.
Oh,
And
okay.
funny you asked that. So I come to class. I was on a waiting list to get in. I almost didn't make it. I was really nervous, and I got in at the last second. And the first day of orientation, there's 24 kids in the class. I was the only amputee in the class, and I was the last person to talk. And I stood up. I'm like, really? There's not a single amputee in here? 50% of the class was people that didn't get into the nursing program.
No kidding.
Within
Wow,
the
that's
first 2 weeks, 13 people dropped out.
yeah, that's super interesting. And you know, I would think just through your lens, like you're saying, that surprise of really, there's no other amputees here.
Yeah.
Like, come on,
Like I
like
almost
what's
didn't make it into this program, and like then the program I had to have to wait another year.
right, right, no doubt. So you're basically a technician. So you're casting the molds, doing things like that,
Yeah,
and
I was in the back of the house. We were doing the check sockets, everything. So the company we work for, how big we are, we have two labs, one on the east coast of Florida in Fort Lauderdale, and one on the west coast over in St. Petersburg. And I was working at the one in St. Petersburg.
mhm.
And basically till the owner met me and he's like, man, I need you at the front of the house. Like I don't need you in the back of the house. I need you talking to patients. And so I originally became into there as like a patient advocate and going around and meeting new amputees, and eventually became into a patient care manager. So my day to day is going into facilities and hospitals and meeting new amputees, and kind of I always walk in and I try to make it light and make fun with it, and so I'm always like, welcome to the club. They're like, what
Yeah,
club is
right.
that? I'm like, the cool kid club, man. You paid your dues.
Hey amputees, I'd like to take a moment to introduce everyone to the liner wand. We all know how bacteria and odor can be a major issue with prosthetic liners, and the liner wand is the solution. Did you know that if you're using soap and water, you may be making the problem worse? The liner wand uses a patented formula that deletes all bacteria and smells for 2 weeks. The liner wand is available as an affordable subscription or individually, and it always ships for free. To learn more, visit thelinerwand.com. That's TheLinerwand.com. Use code 211, that's 211, and receive 50% off your first subscription today. You can also use the code RICK, RICK, and receive 25% off your cleanser subscription as well. That's thelinerwand.com. Yeah, I want to dive into that just a little bit. I was a patient advocate for a brief period, just a certified peer visitor for the Amputee Coalition briefly. And I would go in and speak to either pre-op or newly post-op amputees. And that was an experience. I mean, you sort of don't know what you're in for in that situation. And what I mean by that, and this was just my experience, there were times where, an amputee had been struggling, let's say with a problematic limb for a number of years. They had opted for the surgery and they wanted it to go. That was a very certain kind of vibration. And then there were moments similar to yourself, car crash, motorcycle accident, and they're sort of waking up and there's a limb gone. And being able to navigate some of that was very, very challenging. I mean, it really takes a certain skill set, not even as an amputee, but as a human being, to go into that space and make them comfortable and really get them to understand in a calm, sort of caring, gentle way, things are going to be okay. And I would agree that, like you said, humor can be the great equalizer in those situations. And you are someone, and we're going to talk a little bit about your comedy at some point, but you are definitely one of those people that has the ability to put a smile um, on someone's face. So can you talk a little bit about those experiences, you know, meeting people that are ramping up for this whole journey that we're both on?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because everybody takes it in so many different ways. How can I say? For one, a majority of my friends that aren't amputees, they all think I'm hanging out with high active amputees that are all trauma. And the truth of it is, 80% of the amputees in America are diabetic or have a vascular disease. So the type of people I'm meeting, it's a little bit all over the show as into what type of person you're meeting. Like most of the times I'll get like either a text from the doctor or a call from the case manager at the hospital. And I really don't have any idea what I'm walking into until I see like a face sheet, and then I can see the person's age. And that's
Right.
kind of about it. Like in their name, if it's a man or if it's, male or female, or yeah. So walking in, it's always a little different, and it's hard to see. It's great when you see those people that look at it as a second chance in life that they're still here. The
Hmm.
salvage limb, at first I was really upset because, excuse me, in my accident, I woke up in a hospital 3 days later without a leg. And, if they told me there was a 5% chance of me being able to save my leg, I would have probably taken that 5% chance of
Yeah.
saving my leg. Where now being in the industry, for 7 years, I've seen many people try to limb salvage, and, it starts with the toe here and half the foot, and, and they're missing out on a quality of life that it could be much better for them if they, but no one wants to lose a limb, so I was told, to me, it's like losing a child,
Yeah.
a piece of you. So going in
Well,
and out of different types of depression, I try as hard as I can, like, to be there as much as I can for people, but also a lot of times people need to dig deep inside themselves and, change their lifestyle habits.
mm, no doubt. And if you don't mind, I do want to talk about your accident in particular, which is obviously uh, a really significant part of your journey in not only as an amputee but just in your lifetime. Uh, you were injured in a motorcycle accident, and didn't they induce a coma
Correct.
um, afterwards? And I think from what I recall in your ampumentary, love that play on words, by the way. Um, I think what I recall you saying was you were either traveling to or from work and coming out of a service station when a car struck you.
Close. So I was on my way to work. I was on a motorcycle, like a 450, kind of more like a dirt bike, and I
Okay.
was on my way coming into. So where we lived was about a 20-minute from town to town, and I was
Hmm.
coming into town where the base of my adventure company was, and a farmer in an old school Land Cruiser wasn't paying attention. I saw him. He didn't see me, and he pretty much T-boned me. But it was right by a service station, and I was extremely blessed. At that particular moment, there was three separate groups of people in three different cars that all knew me and all heard and saw the accident. So, and then what really happened, like the first three people on the scene of the accident was a prosthetist, was the
Oh
very
my
first
gosh.
person who I took on a canyoning trip the day before. Never met the guy
Oh,
before. A friend of mine owned a hotel there, and she's like, "Hey, I got my friend in from California. Do you mind if he jumps on your tour?" I said, "No problem. Just have him buy a couple beers afterwards. We'll hang out." So I met with him. Really cool guy. I'd never met a prosthetist. Didn't really know anything about it. Had
what an
some beers. He met my
extraordinary
wife. He did.
circumstance when you think about it. I mean, really, Scotty, what an extraordinary circumstance is that you were canyoning with a prosthetist. You said the
Yeah.
day before.
Yeah, he was the
And
first man on the scene of the accident, and then
and he's the first guy there. That's
the second
extraordinary.
person was a good buddy of mine who is a military EMT, and then the third person was a registered nurse who we called the morphine fairy. She had 2 vials of morphine preloaded, came up, stabbed me twice in my good leg at the time, and beat off, and we didn't know who she was, and we called her the morphine fairy for about a week.
Wow. Yeah, sent
Yeah,
from the
so
heavens right there.
And then, basically when I was wearing a full helmet. I had just a little backpack on with like a pelican case, a pelly case. It's kind of like a super tough lunchbox, if you will. And that was right at my
Mm-hmm.
lumbar. And I rolled into the ditch, and I sat up, took my helmet off, checked myself, and everything seemed fine. I was like, dude, did I really come unscathed? And then I saw my foot like way over here. I was just like,
Oh,
no,
wow.
wait a second. So I
So
leaned
you
back and
were
started
you were
yelling for help.
conscious. So you were conscious. You took the impact and you woke up, or never really went away. You were conscious, and you realized something was very wrong because you're checking your person, and you're saying, "Uh-oh, something's not quite right here." And what was the emotional set in that particular circumstance? I mean, what were you thinking?
I leaned back and started yelling for help. And then when I saw familiar faces, I mean, I was in shock, but I never got unconscious. At one
Hmm.
time, I tried to get up because I wanted to fight the guy that hit me.
Oh, sure.
So my adrenaline was kicking in all times. It took about 45 minutes for the ambulance to show up, and it was two guys with an oxygen tank and a backboard in an old beat up van. And I was a wilderness EMT for a while and knew a lot of this type of stuff, and I kind of had to direct them in order to how to put me on the backboard. And then from there, it was a
Wow.
45-minute drive to a hospital, and they couldn't do much for
Wow.
me. Then I had to get helicopter evac to San Jose, which is a city which had proper first world style hospital and treatment.
Yeah, they had to airlift you right the hell out of there.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Now, did the driver stay at the scene? What was the circumstance there?
That at the scene, they've kind of just traction my leg. So my leg was blown out, but still attached. As my buddies told me, it's like, man, we saw this hamburger meat, but no ketchup. So my femoral artery kinked on itself and made a natural tourniquet.
Oh my gosh. Now, the guy that hit you, what happened? I mean, what happened with him?
It's old school Costa Rica. He was an older gentleman in his 60s. He was a farmer, and he had a lot of family. By the time I went to trial, it was 3 years later, uh, and he was found completely guilty, but because of how old he was, it was his first offense, and all his assets and everything he had went to his family. So there was nothing, even though he was 100% guilty. They didn't even put him in prison or anything.
So
And
so aside from some hassle in terms of accountability, and this might be a pretty complex question. How do you feel? I mean, where are you at with all of that? How do you cleanse yourself of maybe some residual feelings about someone that completely changed the trajectory of your life?
I'm living a really happy, fulfilled life right now. I kind of sometimes say it's like the day I lost my leg is the day I found myself.
Yeah.
We're more than just a body part, more than just leg, more than just an arm. I mean, I get to do a lot of good things, and I have a huge tribe of people that are constantly pushing me in the right direction. I always tell people, you always hear that story. It's like, I had to prove everybody wrong. Well, all my friends would tell me, you're going to do this again. You're going to go snowboarding. You're going to go surfing. So instead of having to prove everybody wrong, I had to prove everybody right.
Right. That's a great way to look at it, and I think a very healthy way to look at it, because it obviously has not slowed you down. And sometimes when I with anything in life, when you sort of process the shoulda, woulda, coulda kind of stuff, and we can't go back, and change the past. And I sort of tend to live my life in a way where um, things that have happened to me, unfortunate things. I've had multiple surgeries, and you know, um, had my life, had myself, and my family members told, well, he's probably not going to make it. Um, all of that is in my rear view, and I'm very excited about what's in front of me. and that's why I just keep moving towards it. So I commend you for your ability to sort of parse that out and say, I've got such an amazing support system that it really doesn't slow down my momentum at all. And I
Well,
think that's the key, right?
I definitely have good and bad days.
I'm not discounting the bad days. I've got them too. No, I know what you're saying. It's not all peaches and cream. And as amputees, we all have setbacks. I think setbacks become just a natural part of what we do. And especially you being in the business that you're in, I am sure you see that fluctuation of forward movement, setback, forward movement, setback. When you see your own patients gaining momentum and then something happens that sort of pulls them back and makes it difficult for them to kind of ramp up again and get excited. I mean, for myself, when I first became an amputee, um, I really struggled, man. I really struggled to get into a place where I felt comfortable in a prosthesis. I had a lot of skin breakdown. I tend to have a lot of bony prominence on my residual limb. I have a lot of places that just love to rub, everything. And I was struggling. I mean, for a while until I found the right recipe, until I found the right cocktail that got me into a space where I could excel and I could start to become more active. But a lot of those trials can be tough. And I would imagine you see that in real time, right?
Oh yeah, it's completely. The podcast I listened to with the American Ninja, which was awesome, by the way. Another
Uh,
great, amazing story.
Thank
He
you.
spoke a lot about his kids and how that was motivation for him. And I mean, when I woke up out of my coma and I was in the hospital, I'm looking around and got tubes in me and stuff. I was like, first question was like, why am I still here? And
Yeah.
when I saw my son was 2.5, and he walked in that hospital room, and right there, all my answers were all my questions were answered, if you will. And yeah, I knew I had to be there and be a role model for him, and the support with my wife, and the two of them. We're a small family. It's just my wife and my child.
This is Tavin, right?
And that is what was a huge motivation for me. And when I walk and see new patients in the hospitals, what I find is when I ask them, do they live with someone? Do they have family? Do they have friends? And the people that don't have anybody, that is the really tricky part. It's hard
Yeah.
for me to relate in that situation because I don't know where I'd be if I didn't have the support that I had.
Now your
I can be
son's name, am I saying that right? Tavin?
Taven, like
Taven.
Raven, but with
Okay.
a T. Taven.
Got it. So that is something that I noticed as well in your little mini documentary, your ampumentary, Stump Life Adventures. Your relationship with Taven seemed to be your beacon. It seemed to be the thing that, as we say, kind of woke you up, kind of sobered you up. Like, hey, man, there is no other path but the one I'm going to pursue with my son, and to live your life, with that sort of that power force that children can create, that just gives us that ability to go, nothing is going to stop me. I've got my son. He relies upon me, and I want to be everything that is gonna enrich his life, and also we're gonna share that energy, that I can give to him, and he can reciprocate back, and the thing I've noticed in so many of your video blogs is he's such a big part of that experience. I mean, not only is he an amazing snowboarder, but he's a great dancer.
Kids got moves.
I mean, it's just such a wonderful celebration of life that that you give us all a little kind of peek into. And because I'm a musician, I love the fact that so many of those blogs are set to music, and it's just this kind of freewheeling, let's have fun. We're just living life and doing our thing, and it's really inspiring. And I appreciate that you share those things and that energy. But yeah, he's a card. He's a great kid, and I can tell just by watching.
And I was so worried, here I am in the like, I every day I was either surfing or running down waterfalls. So when I lost my leg and my son was only 2.5, it's like, of course, the first thing in my head is like, how am I going to kick a soccer ball with him? How am I going to teach him how to surf? I'm never going to be able to snowboard with him.
Yeah.
And and it's completely changed. You saw, I had my first family holiday where I had my wife, my son, and I, the three of us were all snowboarding together, and that was something I never thought would be possible.
Right.
And now I'm a soccer dad. I can kick the ball with him a little bit, but now I'm a soccer dad, just driving around all the different tournaments and games he has everywhere. We're actually going to an Orlando City game this evening.
Awesome. No,
Yeah,
that's
so
fantastic.
he's been the big ideal part, and because it was different for him, he only knows me with two legs from photos. He doesn't have any proper memory of it. And what was really cool is a buddy of mine, Nick Stillwell. He runs the Never Say Never Foundation, and he runs a thing. And every year they have a pirate camp where they, take donations all year long, and they bring 40 different families from all over the United States with at least one child with a limb difference. And we got invited the first year, and then we've been volunteering every year after that. And so I think we're coming on to our 6th or 7th year. And when my son saw kids that were amputees like me, it like blew his mind. He's like, "Dad, they're like you." And you know how kids are, like, they're resilient, man. They got their blades, they're running around. And yeah, I think it's really made him much more of a humble person and much more of an understanding person. And yeah, he's always looking out to help. And I think that's had a lot to do with it.
No, that's fantastic. And obviously, you've had that influence on him. Stump Life Adventures is on YouTube, and I highly recommend checking it out. It's just a really neat little collection of different bits and pieces of Scotty's life, and of course his remarkable son Taven. With that, we are going to take a quick break, and we are going to do a segment that we do on every podcast called "Amps You Should Know." Today on Amps You Should Know, I'd like to introduce you to Sagar Mahara. He is a 30-year-old amputee. He is above the knee. He's been an amputee for about 2 years. I had an amazing call with Sagar last week, so I wanted to introduce you to him. We talked about music mostly. He was very, very curious about myself as a musician. I'm a drummer, and Sagar is a guitarist. He's a keyboardist. He's a vocalist. He's kind of like an all-around kind of musician. I definitely envy his abilities. He's one of those people that is very thoughtful. He's living his best life. As an amputee, he continues to work for the government in his native country of Nepal. And he's just one of those people that is just a pleasure to talk to. We had a wonderful exchange, and I'm wishing him well, and I'm so happy to introduce you to him. Sagar Mahara is definitely an amp that you should know. Hey everyone, we're back with Scotti Trinler. We've been talking about all kinds of different things, his career, his family life, his video blog. I want to do a little bit of a rewind, Scotty, and talk about the period of time after your accident, when you became an above-the-knee amputee, and knowing that, from what I've read, that it was a bit of a struggle, because it sounds like you sort of came out of the gates charging. I mean, you came out of the gates really, really in an accelerated kind of trajectory. And then I believe you developed some bone spurs and things kind of went a little bit sideways on you. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I lost my leg on December 5th, and I was fit with a prosthesis out the door January 7th. So
Holy cow, that's fast.
just over 30 days. Now being in the
Holy
industry,
cow.
I know how fast that is. So
Yeah, was your incision like ready for that? I mean, that's pretty remarkable. I mean, you must heal fast.
yeah, I got that Wolverine in me.
Exactly.
No,
Wolverine.
that's
Another
something I
X-Men.
wanted to talk about is the prosthetist that I was found there. His name was Dino, and because I didn't know anything about amputees, I didn't know anything about prosthetics, nothing. I mean, unless you have a friend or a family member or working in some type of charity group or something, like, why would you?
Yeah.
And he came into the hospital bed, and I thought it was all over. And he came in with a patient advocate who was a younger gentleman with a above knee amputation as well, and he had a prosthesis on, and he was moving and grooving pretty good. And I was like, oh wow. And then, and so of course I got some stuff in me, some medications and everything. I'm like, but can he dance? And this dude busted out a little salsa move, and I was like, we got this. so,
That's awesome.
so that was a huge inspiration for me, and being able to do to kind of give that back to people. So I'm literally like role reversal, going in and meeting new patients, and being that, like, hopefully, glimpse of hope. I tell people, you got me on your team now, and I do the best I can to help them out with how I can.
Yeah, so you develop bone spurs, and did you have more surgeries after that? Was that the plan of attack?
So you spoke about music. Music is a huge part of my life. Surfing was always like, that was my everything. And my wife one day told me, she's like, what if you can't surf? Again, I was like, I'll always be able to surf. This is before my amputation, and I was like, well, for whatever reason, if we move to the mountains or something, I've always have music. So I went to 3 different music festivals within the first 4 months of my amputation.
Ooh, you're walking all over the place.
Oh, just going for it. And yeah, and the pain started developing more and more, and my prosthetist was trying to work with me the best that I could to try to figure out, where this problem is. And where I was in Costa Rica, we were coastal. For me to get to my prosthetist was a 4-hour drive one way. So
Wow.
he wanted me to get an x-ray, and the nearest place to get an x-ray was like an hour. So I ended up actually going to our local vets, and I got an x-ray from our vet in Costa Rica, and then sent him the CD, and he was able to look into it and show me that I had the bone spurs. And so I started doing more and more research into what bone spurs are, and it's basically a calcium deposit, and it happens sometimes a lot with trauma patients that the bone actually tries to regrow itself. And
Yeah.
so I had like these big old like hooks like at the distal end, at the bottom end of my femur, and like the ligaments were like rolling over this hook, and it got so excruciating. And then I ended up having to get a revision, so they went in there and kind of sanded it all up, and put some, I don't know, some tack over it to stop it from growing back out, and started getting back on my way. So that was after 4 months. So that was a big blow to me and my family. We were doing good and moving forward, and then all of a sudden having to go in for a revision. I looked at myself, and then yeah, the bone spurs actually ended up coming back a little bit, and I tried to. I was like, dude, I'm not going in for another operation. So I changed my diet, did a lot more research on what was happening. And the cool thing that I saw was, apple cider vinegar, unfiltered apple cider vinegar is what, heel spurs is what they did to dissolve it. And I was like, well, if that's on the heel and that's a bone, it's the same thing growing on here. So I was doing
Hmm.
compresses with apple cider vinegar on my stump for like a month.
Now, does
And
some of that holistic approach, because I'm always fascinated by natural remedies, I'm somewhat of a firm believer that Mother Nature gives us the things that we need to heal. Whether you're talking about, from a dietary standpoint, or, different things like acupuncture, or, all kinds of alternatives, let's say to, I guess you could call it just Western medicine. Um, Now, your wife's a yoga instructor, correct?
Correct. Yeah, she's a yogi. She does
And
yeah,
does
she
some
does
of
Reiki
so does some
healing.
of does some of that, does some of that approach, in terms of alternative, does some of that come from you both as a couple? Like, is that something you discuss? Is that something you explore together? Or was that something you just completely sort of researched independently?
Both of us were looking into. We knew diet. We knew inflammatories. That was the big
Hmm.
thing going on. And it's so funny when you say it's alternative medicine because the truth be it, the pharmaceutical company
It all comes
basically
from that.
synthesized natural remedies and put a patent on it so they could sell
Listen,
it.
man, listen, you are preaching to the choir, because I will tell people, well, where do you think everything that you pick up in a prescription, in that little orange bottle, where do you think that originated from? Okay. It all came from natural medicine. It all came from a more holistic approach. It just went through all of those processes of, becoming a mass marketed item. So I agree with you, and I am always open when someone says, "Hey, you should try red light therapy, or you should try acupuncture," and I'm very, very open to all of that. I think that there can be a healthy balance between, MDs and some of the other approaches that can really build just a spectrum of care for yourself, but you have to be proactive. And it sounds like you have a partner in that you have someone in your life that supports that and wants to see you do well, and I think that's a blessing.
Oh, complete blessing, yeah, and especially down where we were in the particular part of Costa Rica, we were dealing with a lot of surfers and people wanting to live off the grid. Everybody's growing their own food.
Yeah,
People that were, you know, we were told you are what you eat. I don't feel like that's being said anymore, and it's more prevalent than ever. We are what we eat. I mean, if you look at the
absolutely.
kids and what they're being fed these days, I mean, over 50% of the stuff in the supermarket should be illegal.
I know.
And so that holistic approach and going to just having a healthy system and a non-acidic, trying to alkaline your body, like it helped with the inflammation. I mean, one of the biggest parts we have is inflammation, and it's
Yep.
everywhere we look is where we are is where you get it.
No, I agree with you. And I made some very, very big sweeping changes to my diet myself, eating very clean, doing some fasting, trying out eating raw, and doing some things that, if you were to ask me, 10 years ago, would you ever consider doing? I never would have, because I just thought I was invincible, and I wasn't sick at the time. And it really changed me, the challenges I went through medically and from a health perspective, to just start to rethink all of those things. And, I was talking to a friend of mine from Denmark this morning, and she said, "How are you feeling?" And I said, I'm feeling stronger than ever." And this is someone that saw me through my worst days, and says, it's remarkable that you could be on the other side of what you've been through and feel as good as you do. And honestly, I said, it surprises me too. It really does, because I know what it's like to live in that zombie like state, where you're sluggish, or you're not sleeping well, or you're just not living as clean of a lifestyle as you could, and it does affect every part of yourself. And no, I think it's wonderful that you have a partner, in your wife, and you guys take that approach from more of a family perspective. I want to also get into the ampumentary that you did. Um, was that something that was brought to you as a project? Was that something that you sort of, came up with on your own? What was the process in putting that film together? Because it's really remarkable. I mean, it's really a great piece of work, and I would highly recommend that people check out your channel on YouTube and definitely watch this short film, because it's truly something I think I would show probably to anyone who's a new amputee and say, well, here you go. This is something I want you to check out as you start your journey. So how did that all materialize?
It was a collaboration, a lot of good friends, and we talked. So, I used to run an adventure business down there, canyoning. I lived around the world doing it. I used to live half the year in Switzerland, half the year in New Zealand, going from summer to summer. And so eventually I went to Costa Rica and started my own business. My family had retired to Costa Rica and been in Costa Rica since the early 70s. So I had a couple of connections down there to help out. And so we had it up and running for about 7 years before I had my accident. And
Hmm.
that was my life. And I really wanted to get back in the canyon. And so we're like, why don't we try to document you first time getting back into the canyon? So the
So let's
canyon we
pause for a
had
moment.
six
Let's
waterfalls. The
let's pause
tallest.
just for a quick second.
Sure.
I don't mean to break your momentum.
Nah, no
Can you
worries.
can you explain for the audience what canyoning is? Because I know what it is, and I've done some rappelling myself, but can you kind of walk us through that?
Yeah. So canyoning, it's basically descending waterfalls, or as you like, as it says, a canyon. So, and canyons with water in it. So there's all different, like, slot canyons, and there's multiple different types of canyons, just like there's multiple different types of rivers. So the canyons that I ended up doing were more in Switzerland, so they were glacier, so snow melt, and it would be like a beautiful, like, canyon with water going through it, and we would navigate it going down them. Sometimes you come up to a waterfall, it was safe enough, we'd slide down it. Sometimes we could be able to jump into a pool, other times we're able to rappel down the waterfall. So it's kind of like navigating it the whole time. But everywhere I did it was pretty much glacier. So we were wearing heavy wetsuits with almost like 10 millimeters around your core. And
Wow.
then when I got to Costa Rica and was exploring, and I found a tropical canyon where you could basically wear a pair of board shorts and a t-shirt. And so the canyon the particular one that we ran and navigated, it had 6 waterfalls. The smallest one was about 20 feet. The biggest one was close to 100 feet. And we repelled 5 of the 6 of them.
And how big were the groups that you were taking out? So you were putting together these tours, and you would do the train up, all the safety measures and all that stuff. So what was a typical outing? What did that look like?
We pick you up. We had a base. We'd meet you at around 9 o'clock, and then we'd go in our truck up to the top of the mountain. And then, depending on the size of the group, 2 would be the minimum, 12 would be about the maximum, and we'd have 2
Okay.
guides, one at the top, one on the bottom. So, and it's basically just guiding them, and a lot of talking and teaching them how to rappel. So we don't do a passive rappel. So the guests were actually rappelling themselves. So we taught them how to rappel themselves. A passive rappel would be where we actually lowered you. But so this was a little bit more adventurous, because I'd probably say 80% of the people that we took never rappelled in their life, let alone in a waterfall.
Sure, sure. Yeah, so I would think, from the idea of going on an adventure, this is it. I
It was
mean, you're
pretty
you're
cool, man.
oh yeah, and again, in this particular, mini documentary, this ampumentary, you really get into some of the these beautiful canyons and lush landscapes, and it's really a remarkable it's I don't know, it's very Hollywood for me, because I see that and I go, This is like Indiana Jones," or it's just this really really cool kind of tropical setting, and people are experiencing the thrill of rappelling down these gorgeous waterfalls. And I would think for yourself, and really what the piece of film is about, is you revisiting that. you coming back to that discipline and you allowing us as the viewer to be able to tap in to the emotions that you're feeling in that space, which I think that's where the magic occurs, where you're feeling all those feelings again, and doing it as an amputee.
Yeah, it was amazing. So it was about 9 months after my amputation. So, and then I told you I was a month. It took me about a month to get into a prosthesis, and then I had my revision. So I probably would have been in the canyon a little sooner, but I was still in there after 9 months. And really good buddy of mine, Drew LaPlante, and his buddy Mike. They had all the audio stuff and video stuff actually in Costa Rica, and had like a mini studio, if you will. And Drew himself, the music throughout the entire thing, that's all him. That's all original score that he did himself. Like, he's
No,
got
it's
samples and
wonderful. And
didgeridoos. He's got all kinds of drums
yeah,
going.
right. And on your channel, there's even some drone footage, I think, that is it's breathtaking. I mean, it's just, talk about beautiful country. It's incredible.
Yeah, we were blessed, man, that where we were at, Dominical, Costa Rica, Uvita, Costa Rica, it's really where the mountain jungle meets the ocean. And there's not that many places in the world that actually that it's inhabitable that people are living at it. So you had both. You had the mountains and the beach and tropical at the same time. Where like I was doing in Switzerland, New Zealand, or even Japan, the seasons, you have maybe a 4 or 5 month season tops. And,
Right.
in Costa Rica, we were year round. I mean, there's lower water levels and higher water levels, but we were able to run that tour year round, which is pretty remarkable considering that there's not many places in the world you can do that.
So now that you're in Florida, I mean, is that still in operation, or is that is completely not a thing anymore?
No, it's up in www.coastacanyon.com.
There you
Our
go.
buddy Carlos, he took over the company, and he's down there right now. He's running tours as well. You want to talk about a blessing in disguise? Unfortunately, this whole COVID thing that happened, Costa Rica took it really seriously and closed down
Yeah.
everything. So I don't know where we would have been if we were still down there running that operation.
Yeah, travel, the growth in that industry, to say it's been stunted is an understatement. So, when people want to get out and go to those, secluded, tropical, paradise-like places, I want to see all that get back to, what it used to be, where we can move freely and, challenge ourselves and do those fun things. Um, it's funny because I came across some videos of you and you were doing stand up, and I gotta say, man, I think this might be your gig. I think this might be the thing that's gonna really put you on the map. I mean, what who and what, how did this happen that you suddenly found yourself doing stand up comedy? Tell me about that.
Uh, I've always kind of been a jokester.
Oh yeah.
and and so before I got in the adventure industry, I was a bartender, and then I got into the adventure industry doing whitewater rafting and stuff. So I kind of always had an audience. So I was always used to talking to people and just being off the cuff. And it was actually my wife, or I got into it in Costa Rica. A good buddy of mine, Storm, who owned the bar Jolly Roger over there. He was a shock jock DJ out of the Massachusetts, Boston area, and he had a buddy coming down to Costa Rica that was going to do. That's an actual on the road comedian, and he wanted to have a comedy night at the bar. And he hit me up. He's like, "Hey man, you think you can put together like 5-7 minutes?" I was like, I think so. And he put together some. So there's like 4 of us that night. And yeah, I guess people found me funny. And then we moved back to Florida, and St. Pete. It was actually my wife, Sarah. She was the one that pushed me out. There was a couple open mic nights, and she pushed me out, and I went to 2 of them. And the second one I went pretty late. And I didn't realize it was like a contest. There's like 35 people at this open mic night thing, and I ended up getting second place in
Nice.
money. I was like, wait,
Yeah.
this is a competition? I didn't even know that. And then after that, she's like, I don't know if I want you in the bar scene that night, having strangers laughing at you. So
That's
I had to calm
fun.
down a little bit. I do a little bit here and there for fun, but Yeah, it's definitely a passion of mine that I would love to revisit. And the cool thing about it, it seems like there's not really an age on comedians. You can see them as young as they are and as old as they are. So
No,
when the right
I
opportunity comes, I will definitely be jumping into it.
I love the way you close your set. And if I could reenact, uh, hi, my name is Scotty, and I have one leg.
Yeah, my buddy Tate started videoing the beginning of that. He only got into he missed like the best parts in the beginning. Like one of my favorite ones, people is like, a lot of people when they see an amputee, they're like, oh, they know about the running blades. They're like, oh man, do you have one of those? Do you have a running blade? I was like, do I look like I run? I'm like, this is an excuse the rest of my life, never have to run again. I was told only one chase, and no one is chasing my fat butt.
Talking about legs, the one thing that's pretty remarkable, and I am very unfamiliar with because I'm a below the knee amputee, uh, is the prosthesis that you're using to snowboard. And I've only caught glimpses of that particular leg in your video blog. Can you explain what piece of engineering that is? Because that is one badass looking thing that you got going on there.
Yeah, so there's about there's three different companies and three different models that are using relatively the same technology. Inside of the casing, it's a Fox shock, so it's the same type of shock system that you have like on the front of a mountain bike.
Mm,
So when it compresses, it actually gives back up. So being a below knee amputee, you still have both your knees. So when I stand up, it's all on one knee. When you stand up, even though you have a prosthesis, but you're using both your knees to stand up.
correct.
So with the Fox shock system, when it compresses, it actually gives back up,
So you got
which is a
return
big thing.
energy.
But
Yeah,
so if I'm wet,
return
but you
energy.
can't walk in it, it's stiff legged. Like you really have to load it. And I've tried all three on the market. Otterbach makes one. A good buddy of mine, Mike Schultz, fantastic. He's my idol in this. You know, he was the one that came out. He does the moto knee, and he is a Paralympian snowboarder, and he kind of brought his technology and his equipment to the Paralympics and snowboarding, and was able to have a lot more people come out and snowboard properly. And then the other one is from Prodier, which is a company out of France, which a guy I met at the World Championships of Adaptive Surfing, he kind of made that, and another company bought it. So all three knees were designed by amputees, and bigger companies bought them, and one made his own company. So it actually came from people that are in the industry trying to make it and trying to get the best of what they can out of the sports they're doing.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, because of course, I see something like that and I'm immediately, laser beam drawn to what's going on there because I'm not I'm not an avid guy when it comes to winter sports as much as I am in the summer. And I know that it's in a lot of ways because when I was younger, I did a lot of water skiing and um some people will say, well, it's similar in some degrees as far as balance and the muscles that you're using. But, once you're an above the knee, I would think that there is a whole lot of technology that goes on into giving you the proper feel, the right amount of return energy that you need when you're, navigating. But yeah, when I saw that, I thought to myself, man, I've got to ask Scotty about that. So I appreciate you sharing it.
Of course, no. There's a saying, and so like in the amputee world, like we always joke around, like AKs versus BKs. So an AK, above knee amputee, would always say it's like below knee amputee. You're not even really an amputee. That's just kind of more of an inconvenience.
Oh, it's so funny. It's so funny you say that because I see I'm somewhat voyeuristic when it comes to social media and I see that chatter going on online where someone will be, a BK will be sort of, waxing poetic about, oh, woe is me. And then you'll see an above the knee chime in and they're like, do you have any idea how lucky you are? And it's like, oh no. And then
Yeah.
I get out the popcorn, right? Because I'm like, okay, here we go.
Yeah. I've calmed down a lot on that. I used to be a lot more vocal on a lot more, situations out there, and I've calmed down quite a bit. And yeah, because everybody's going through their own struggle in their own way, and yeah.
For sure.
And
No,
but
for sure.
definitely, yeah. So but people see, like, people that aren't familiar friends of mine. It's like, oh, I saw this other guy doing it, dude. He's an amputee. I'm like, dude, totally different amputee.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, I had someone stop me in the supermarket the other day and was just going on and on and on and talking about her son who was an amputee and asking me all these different questions. And I said, it's so nice of you to stop and talk to me. I said, do you know what kind of amputee he is? And she said, well, he's like you. And I said, well, is he above the knee or is he below the knee? And she said, I'm not sure. So I think for a lot of folks, even close family members, sometimes they don't really even understand, fully what's going on. There's been times where I've taken off my prosthesis in front of friends or family just to give myself a break, and they have remarked like, "Oh, okay, I didn't realize you had that much of your leg." So yes, there's that educational piece where a lot of folks just kind of take us all and throw us into the same hopper, you know? You're all the
100%.
same yeah, you're all the same people. And it's like, well, no, actually we're not. Before we wrap up today, I want to talk about the future of OPC and where you see yourself. I mean, what is on the horizon? What's happening for you and what should we be looking for in your future?
Uh, rather in my future, I'm just being a family man right now, and then trying to snowboard and play with my family as much as possible. With OPC, I mean, they're an amazing company that I work for, like very compassionate, and we've had a lot of employees come from different companies. I've been with them for 7 years now, and when other employees come and start working for us, they do see a difference. I plan on retiring with this. My son he's only in fourth grade. He's going into fourth grade right now. So I don't see myself, my office is 10 minutes from my house. So
Wow.
I travel a lot, but where I travel, it's more countryish, and everyone's like, oh, Inverness, Florida. I was like, there's nothing up there. I was like, in Costa Rica, I had to cross two rivers to get to my house. It's like, so and it's dubbed up here too, where it's in Citrus County. They actually call it the Nature Coast, and all my friends think I made that up. They're like, there's no place in Florida called the Nature Coast. I'm like, talk to my Nature Coast Surgical Center then. I'm with the name outside.
Right.
So I plan on being with this company as long as they'll have me. I mean, I feel very fulfilled helping, my people, if you will. And whatever you want to believe in and higher powers and stuff. I mean, I'm definitely still supposed to be here, and I found a purpose, and you uplift yourself by uplifting others. And so my motto is activating amputees and trying to get them up and moving and grooving, if you will.
Yeah, activating amputees. I mean, what a great mantra. Scotti Trinler, part of OPC. What an amazing story. We are so fortunate that you shared it with us today. Please don't be a stranger. I'm going to check in on you frequently. And once again, thank you. That's going to wrap it up for us, everyone. I want to wish everyone well, health, and happiness. This is the Amped Up to 11 podcast, and we will see you next time.